First, let me thank the bookstore and thank Howard University for the opportunity of being here. It's humbling since I left this institution, I tell my friends, 100 years ago. But I left nearly 50 years ago, actually. And it's pretty humbling to be back to see what has become of the institution. But it's also a fact that the institution has enriched my own life personally in a very, very significant way. And it's interesting listening to my colleagues at the desk here. And I don't know whether the bookstore contrived it to be like this, but you will have gotten by now the idea that this is really, intended or not, a kind of bridge building between America and other countries. It appears, based on the people up here, it will appear that this contrivance has led to a bridge between countries that are predominantly non-white and the United States, which is currently pretty much white, so to speak. That on its own is very interesting. Secondly, given the story I tell in my book, I like to tell my audience that we are not simply coming from our own current zip codes or our own street address. We're actually coming from the address of our heritage. And that is a pretty remarkable thing in America today. And I think we're all aware of the kind of disconnect that is currently taking place in America, which makes, contrived or not, this kind of arrangement pretty interesting to me. My story will basically take folks from my time in Jamaica and the Caribbean to my time in North America and my time in Africa. It basically has taught me, if nothing else, a very significant fact, that people's cultures must be respected. And the fact is that there's no culture that is superior to another. They are just different. And when we fail to acknowledge those differences, when we run into trouble. And we are currently in America running into a lot of trouble because we seem to be losing sight of the fact that our culture is not superior to others. And there is a sense, and people, scholars describe it as American exceptionalism, which is a kind of convoluted way of saying my culture is better than yours. The truth is, my culture is different. It's not better, it's not worse, it is just simply different. And we have to acknowledge that difference. Hopefully, I'll read passages from my book, and those passages might take you to places that will lead you to understand that, generally speaking, even when you exist in a society that quite often tells you you can't succeed, there are always ways for you to actually succeed. And it is not that those societies and institutions with which you are familiar are actually actively plotting against you. It is a result of the history. It's a result of certain programming that we all go through based on where we grew up, how we grew up, the people with whom we grew up, and the schools to which we went, and so on. And all of those differences play a pretty large part in how we relate to our environment. And not just in a physical way, but in a sense in our interpersonal relationships. And what I try to establish in the book is the reality that basically the kind of institutional disconnects that existed in America even 50 years ago no longer exist. So basically the solutions we are facing today in America really have very little to do with institutionalized bias or institutionalized prejudice. It has to do with people's perception of one another. And I think that is where our media actually have lost their way. They seem to be so focused on institutional differences. If you look at the Tea Party, if you look at the far right-wing position of the Republican Party, you look at the far left position of the Democratic Party, they're all looked at in blocks and large pieces, but in reality, that is not where our problems lie. Our problems actually lie in the relationship between me and you, relationship between me and you. And really, that's a much bigger task in my mind than dealing with the institutionalized, large-scale problem we faced 50, 60 years ago, especially in America. And that is my hope for my book, is that the people who read it will get the impression that we can talk about these things. Because one of the problems I find in America is that black people generally don't talk to a lot of white people. And white people generally don't talk to a lot of black people. Because part of the discussion is very painful. But it's a discussion that has to be had. Because you cannot begin from a place where you're not willing to talk. Nothing will start unless you're willing to talk about it. And so I talk about it very, very bluntly in my book. And I will read certain sections from the book which I hope will get people to understand that there's nothing wrong in talking about it. There's nothing wrong in saying the sun rises tomorrow, because it does. There's nothing wrong in saying when the sun is up and it's a good day, you'll be warm. It's a fact. So we need to get beyond the reluctance to talk about these issues, because only individuals can solve this problem. No, it's not. The institutional solutions have all been taken. So it's between you and me, between friends, between relatives. And until we get to that place, I don't think we'll get much farther than we are today in terms of relationships in this wonderful country. Hopefully I'll get to read a few sections from the book and have questions and answers, because I've found that in all my readings, that is where you have the most bang for your buck, so to speak, where people ask questions and challenge assumptions and challenge statements, and we exchange ideas. So that's basically where I'll end for the moment. I don't know if either of you wish to read sections from your...
Well, I can flip through the book since it's a pictorial.